So this is a video that begins to explain something called parallax motion. And parallax motion is basically when you're sitting in your car or driving in your car and you see that the things that are very close to you are moving very, very, very fast, and the things that are far away from you are moving very, very slow. It's basically an optical effect that people can create in motion graphics, that if things that are near you move at different speeds than things that are far away, you get a kind of more illusionistic sense of distance and depth. This is something that is really common in 2.5D animation, and this is going to kind of show you how it's done. I'll first give you an example. I'll just play what we have, where we're going, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And so this is a series of assets that you have access to, and you can notice that there's some play with depth of field, and certain things are in focus and certain things are not. There's also things that are closer are moving faster than things that are farther away. And essentially this is an arrangement of images that a camera is moving through and then ultimately moving into. So you can kind of pan and dolly, you can go left and right and into something. And you can get some very interesting kind of movement effects. And so this is essentially the effect that we're going to look at today. So you have a whole assemblage of these different individual elements, like, for example, ruin 1, and ruin 2. So many ruins. So we have all these assets, and like long landscapes. There's also a sky and a sky 2. Trees, they're mainly black on black, so they can't see them. So anyway, and sculptures. So you have all these that you can play with, and this ultimately is going to become your these can be assets for you to use for your technical exposition. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to show you how it works. So I have taken these objects and dragged them onto my composition here, and they are arranged just so that so I have them kind of in the back. I have this the long landscapes, and in the front I have the characters and ruins. If I look at the side view, oops, that's the side view. Here we go. I think it's a little easier this way. You can kind of see how these are structured. These are from the side. Oh, there we go. Let's go from the front. So you can kind of see how these are from the front or from the top. So here, I think, is the best where you can see I have in the back some of the long skyscapes and landscapes, and then I have the different sculptures, ruins, and that the camera is going to come through here, and then it's ultimately going to come up through this cluster of objects, if you recall the motion. So how this works is we've created cameras together, and if I go ahead and in this composition, let me make some space. I'm going to go ahead and create a new camera, and this time I'm going to just leave it as a one node camera. I'll leave it as a 2-node camera, so that way you could make some internal panning and changing as you go. I'm going to say okay. So here's my camera. So I can start off positioning my camera. I can just moving my camera around like this, I get a lot of kind of cool effects. Let's see, I can move it left, move it right. And just because the objects are arranged with actual physical depth, it gives the illusion that, oops, you're gonna run into that guy. It gives the illusion that there's actual depth, that you're looking at something that's a lot more spatial. So the thing is, we want a lot of different compound movements in this. And so the best way, and a camera has lots of different effects, or lots of different, there's a point of interest, there's the position, and the orientation, and all this can be very complex. So the best way actually to control the camera is to do something called, to attach it to a null layer. So I'm going to do layer, new, null object. Now a null object is really just a dummy object, meaning it, once you attach something to it, you can move that null object around, and it's like the center of a group or the center of an object, and it can be like a singular control for a complex object or a complex group of objects. So simply all I'm really doing is taking this camera and making its parent the null object. So I'm going to go pull it to null object. And so now, as all I have to do is now I can move around the null object, and I can move this around. And while I move this around, as we can actually also make the camera look left and look right, and it's a lot more easy to deal with. So this is actually pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and start. Now that I have my null object, I'm going to go ahead and start. Let's start with a position keyframe, and I'll start right here. So we're starting over on this long assembly here, and I'm going to move it. Oops, sorry, I haven't moved to the next keyframe. So let's say it's going to take 10 seconds for this to go. Okay, so we've got so now we're on the second 10 seconds. So I'll move this 1, 2. 10. I'll have it kind of, here's our 10-second goal. All right, and then let's see, at my 20-second goal, I want it to go, let's make a new keyframe, and then move that null object over about right there. And then at my 30-second goal, I'm going to have that null object move. I'm moving it up. I'm also going to move it forward. Oh, you know what? We haven't put that null object in 3D space. So that's going to help. So now I can add this null object in 3D space, and it can move forward. Kind of trimmed the edge of that. So, and you can see there's kind of an arc now. There's an arc now that kind of shows the path, and we can alter that arc once we've got all this going. So if it feels too rigid, we can play with this individually. Like for example, let's zoom in here and just make some space. Let's select this particular thing, and that's going to show this Bezier handle. So I'm going to make it kind of look like it curves down a little bit, or away. It's actually kind of curving away. And then here, let's move it so I can see. So here, let's go ahead and add the convert vertex tool. And I take this and I will move it that way. So now it's going to kind of zoom in a little bit before it zooms back out. So you can really kind of play with camera motion in a really much more sophisticated way. So kind of zooming out, zooming in a little bit, zooming out again. And through a series of just manipulation and moving the camera from point to point, you can actually do a lot of sophisticated movement and get some really interesting looks.